Tonight, we're working on the 7-inch glide bait. Last episode, we shaped the bait and added the scales to it. And tonight, we're going to separate the two pieces, do a little more shaping, and then add the weight. Now, if you missed it, I will link the previous videos below. So let's go separate these two pieces. So all that is holding the front piece to the back piece right now is tape. And then there's also double-sided sticky tape holding the two halves of the bait together, just like you'd build one of those smaller balsa baits, which I really need. Oh, I got one right here. Just something small here. There we go. Two pieces separated. Now what we can do is kind of hollow this out a little bit, so that way at the top here, so that way there'll be a little nice kind of U shape carved out of the bait right there. And then on this one, we're gonna shave off both sides. That way it makes for a good joint and there's plenty of room for the back half of the bait to be able to turn side to side. I hate this part because I can screw it up really easy, but we're gonna do our best to not do it, because right now, hole number 2 here is looking beautiful. So I'm gonna jump over to belt sander and we're going to do some work on the back half of the bait. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is kind of smooth out the face of it here. That way it'll be nice and even and match. Now it's nice and clean, and I'm going to very slowly take some material off of both corners until we get like a nice V shape at the top of the bait. All right, I'm gonna call it quits there before I take too much off. So I think I got it pretty close. It is important that both sides are pretty symmetrical, because otherwise it might not swim the same, or you might get a better glide off of one side than the other. I'm still trying to perfect that. I don't want to say I've got that completely dialed in yet, but I do know the more of an angle you can get like this on a bait, on a glide bait, the better. It seems like to me, because if it only goes that much, you're not going to get as good of a glide as if the back half was able to go that far. So I've been trying to take this down pretty skinny. That way there's plenty of room for movement inside the bait. What I'm going to do now, though, is actually I'm going to go flatten that part on the belt sander really fast. Hold on one sec. Okay, there we go. Nice, clean, smooth surface there. So what I'm going to do now is try to take my Dremel tool, and we're going to bring it in on top of the bait and kind of carve that out the best that we can and make a nice little pocket there for the back half of the bait to sit in. Okay, and laugh all you want, but this works pretty good. Got a piece of sandpaper I have stapled or taped around a dowel rod, and that works pretty good to get like a nice smooth finish, because the Dremel tool can kind of walk on you a little bit, so it might not be symmetrical. But if you take your dowel rod, you can do the final sanding like that, and it'll sand both sides equal and at that curve I'm looking for. So if you can see that, now I got a nice pretty curve in the back of the bait there, which should allow for that to sit in there just nicely. I got to round over the edges a little bit more on the back half, but then that gives us quite a bit of wiggle room. I think I'm going to take the Dremel tool and knock off the corner of this just a little. And then I'm going to come in with a little sandpaper, do a nice final hand sand on it. All right, you guys can see that there. And then once the screws go in, or like the screws I'm using for the joint, it'll push that back. So we should get a pretty far side-to-side motion, something close to that. But I'm happy with how that looks. And again, this is still a test bait, so if it don't work, then we'll try it different on the next one. I do know that big one I showed you guys in the last video, I did not sand as far back on this, and so the angle of it only went to about there, and it didn't swim as good, so I took it apart, sanded it back further, repainted and resealed that, and got the angle to be more where it could go further, and it swam a lot better. Actually swam just like I wanted it to. So that's why I figure on this one I'll try to replicate that. I'm going to go ahead and take these pieces apart so I can add the belly weight, and then we can glue it together, and once it's glued together I'll do one more final hand sanding along all the edges there. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Separating, simple as that. Oh yeah, and I don't think I said this in the last video. I'm going to put a BB in there. So it's got like a real soft knock rattle sound. Nothing crazy, maybe just a little dinner bell for the big mamas that are hungry. Alright, over to the lead pot. I'm going to see if that's heated up yet, and then we can go ahead and add our weight. Alright, got the weight in all of our parts. I don't know if you can see right there, got it a little bit too full, so I'm just going to take the Dremel tool and knock that flat. I'm just going to make sure when these two pieces get married together that I don't have any crazy gaps anywhere. And then I'm going to use actual BBs. I'm going to put 2 in there for the rattles. I don't know if it'll rattle or if I'll end up putting too much glue and that might hold it in place a little. I'm not too worried about it, but it'd be kind of cool on a glide bait to have a little bit of noise. Did you guys see that bug? That one really scared me. It's just a moth though, so you guys can tell my mom how brave I was. I didn't even flinch. Eventually, what I'd really like to do on these is do a through wire design, because then I'm not using the screw-in line ties and hook ties. I think the through wire would be the ultimate. But we just got to get them swimming exactly how I want first, and then we can start modifying the other portions of the bait. I think when it comes to wood glue, the more clamps the better, right? See, that's what I don't want. That gap right there. For obvious reasons, but just trying to gap fixed. I think I'm happy with that one as well. I'm going to, because it's so late by the time I got out here tonight, that I won't have time to let this dry and then sand. So we'll come back tomorrow night and then work on our next step. All right, this has been sitting over a day now, so more than enough time for it to cure, or for the glue to finally cure. So now all I'm going to do is take some sandpaper and kind of sand the edges. You can see we're got a little bit of glue shooting through there on the sides, but our rattle is still there, so that's good. Golly, these animals are noisy. I think I'm gonna call it good there. Again, this is still a test bait, so not terribly worried about how perfect it is. But I do want it to look good for you folks on YouTube. What I'm gonna do now is go ahead and do a test fit here with our joint. My brother 3D printed this for me, so I can put it in my drill. And then, instead of sitting here twisting these in, makes that way easier, especially once I go to put the glue in there, because I do like to put a 2-part epoxy in there. Makes it a lot easier to get them glued in good. But here is the angle of the joint. I'm still kind of playing around with that, like I was saying, but pretty solid. Good left to right. All right, I got the final hand sanding done on here, and then I wiped everything down. I also used an old paintbrush and dusted out where all the scales are, because that tends to hold a lot of that sawdust, and then once the paint and clear coat goes on, we kind of lose some of that detail. So I did make sure all that was brushed out, and then, like I said, did one more final sanding on it. What I'm going to do now, prior to painting, is I'm going to seal the bait with some polyacrylic Max, and it's clear satin. I don't think it really makes a huge difference. Now this can's almost empty, and I haven't opened it in a while, so I'm hoping I still got some good stuff in there, which it looks like it. And I'm just going to use a cheap throwaway brush and brush this all on there. And that pretty well wraps it up for tonight's video. I think what I'll probably most likely do is, once this is dried, I'll do a really light sanding and then probably do a second layer. Prior to painting, I do want this to be completely dry before I start putting any airbrush paint down on there. So tomorrow night's video will be something different, and then we can come back and throw down a beautiful paint job on this bait. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in tomorrow night's video.